Greetings everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I have a build for you for the Buran class. If you watched my video yesterday, I did a review of this ship and I gave it a very glowing review talking about how great it is as a tank. So I have a tank build for you again today, and this is another energy weapon build because tanks use energy weapons. So no torpedoes here, don't worry about it. We do have concentrate firepower though. Before we go ahead and start talking about the build specifically, we have to take a moment to talk about game mechanics, and specifically fire at will. Now, fire at will used to be the best thing in the world. It was great for DPS, it was good for tanking, it was good for everything. And then they did the rebalance and they increased the minimum cooldown on fire at will. Oh, I can see that my loadout is messed up again. So we're going to have to, I think it might be because they, this patch fixed synthetic good fortune. So that may be what the issue is there. So there we go. All right. So, going back again. So they increased the minimum cooldown on fire at will to 20 seconds. But if you look at the tooltip for fire at will, it only lasts for 10 seconds, and that's a pretty lousy uptime. It's only 50%. Now, you may already know that all of the different energy weapon firing modes have an extender trait, which will allow you to get more uptime out of it. And normally, the minimum cooldown on a energy weapon firing mode is 15 seconds. So they all have a 10-second duration, and then the extender will take it up to 14 or 15 seconds, so you can get 100% uptime. And that's still true of fire at will. You can have redirecting arrays, and that's what I went for on this particular build because it's easier, basically. It's just a more casual, friendly way to set up the ship, but it only brings us to about 15 seconds out of 20, which is only 75% uptime. The other thing that you'll see a lot if you look around for builds, and I fashion this build using different builds that people put up on the Star Trek Online Builds Discord. I'm going to link to that in the description, also on Reddit, on the Stow Builds Reddit. You can find lots of great builds to copy from. You can talk to people and get advice. And so a lot of people are doing the Twine Tactical Matrices build. That's where you have fire at will, and then you have torpedo spread, and that torpedo spread will trigger in Twine Tactical Matrices, which will then give you fire at will 1. And if you babysit it and line it up just right so that you're pushing them at the right time, you can get 100% uptime on your fire at will, or at least fire at will rank 1. But in order for that to actually work, you have to have a torpedo on your ship. So if you look at torpedo builds other than this one, you're going to see a lot of them have the Discovery torpedo, the dark matter quantum torpedo on it, because they're doing that particular setup. This is not one of those types of builds. I'm using redirecting arrays as my extender, and so I have all energy weapons. So that I just wanted to get that out of the way up front. So let's talk about the actual build. And when it comes to the weapons, we have Ba'ul anti-proton. This is the energy type of choice, or rather I should say the weapon of choice for tanks. Normally, we always say weapon type doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of weapons you have as long as they're all the same energy type. But for this case, for tanking specifically, the Ba'ul anti-proton are a really good choice because they have Ba'ul refraction, which will cause each shot to ricochet basically for 5% of the damage to another target. So it lets you hit more targets. And then the two-piece Ba'ul set from the Lobby store helps to enhance that even further. It is a pretty good two-piece set, but if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. You can get just Ba'ul weapons from the exchange or from weapon boxes, and you could just do it that way. It wouldn't be terribly expensive. You don't necessarily have to worry about having the Lobby components, but I do have it on this build. So I've got 4 Ba'ul beam arrays in the front, and in the back I have a Ba'ul Omni, which is very rare. These are very expensive, but I got lucky. I had 20 weapon boxes. I opened them up to get Ba'ul beam arrays, and I just got lucky and got an Omni. This is completely optional. You don't need to have the Omni here, but I have it, so I went ahead and put it on. You could just put another beam array here. It'd be totally fine. And then I have the Omni from the Lobby store, which is part of the set, and that goes along with the console, which we'll talk about when we get to the consoles. But you don't need this necessarily either. You could just go with 8 Baul beam arrays if you wanted to. And so then we got 2 more beam arrays to finish it out. For the decks, deflector, engine, warp core, and shields, it's pretty typical to what you normally see with one difference. Normally you get the innervated engines. That's what I have because the speed bonus is just too important to give up basically on any build. The 2-piece discovery, warp core, and shields for the hull regeneration, and also the shield damage from the shield. But for a tank build, people like to run the full 3-piece, well not full, but the 3-piece discovery. So instead of the Elite for Elite colony deflector that has the extra crit chance and severity and projectile damage on it, we're going to use the discovery reputation deflector, and it has a bunch of stats that are hull and shield capacity and stuff. But then also it has the 3-piece bonus is really what we're after here. So we go ahead and take a look at the details. Once you have 3 pieces of the set, you get Mycelial Lightning. Your first weapon attack against each target fires a bolt of mycelia energy at them, dealing some electrical damage and scaling with your max hull, which we can get up to 200,000 with threatening stance and all that sort of stuff. So there is a special interaction between Mycelial Lightning and the Baul Antiproton that causes it to also ricochet, so this can be a very good source of aggro, and this is why people use it, even though you can get a lot of crit chance and severity off of the colony deflector. Then we come down here to devices, and I've gone very lazy on this. I only have energy amplifiers and deuterium. There are plenty of great devices out there. Kobayashi Maru, which I don't have. You can get Jevanite. That can help give you some more hit points. There's hole patch batteries. There's all kinds of stuff you could use. For consoles, we've got Lorca's Custom Fire Control, just because it has weapon power, crit chance, shield penetration, just a really good console. If you happen to be running the 2-piece with the torpedo, like I mentioned earlier, because you're doing the entwined tactical matrices in order to keep your fire at will up, then you would get the 2-piece for a bunch of crit severity as well. But with the version of the build I have, you don't get that. I have the console that comes with the Buran, the Ion Storm Generator, and that gives you hull capacity, shield capacity, and then it can give you, if you have threatening stance enabled, which we will when we're tanking, you get an extra 500% threat generation while the storm lasts, so that's pretty good. I don't think this is necessarily optimal, but it's still pretty good. Then we have the console that goes with the Lobi set, the Baul Linked Sentry Coordination Matrix. This gives us Cat 1 anti-proton damage, hull capacity, removes an incoming control effect and makes you immune to control for 5 seconds, 30-second recharge, so that can be useful once in a while if we get hit by a tractor beam or something. And then the set bonus is pretty nice as well. It gives the refraction, and you have to keep in mind that refraction is only for 5% of your damage. It gives that 100% Cat 2. Not for all of your damage, just for the 5% that reflects or refracts. There's a difference between reflection and refraction in terms of physics. So they're calling it refraction here because it's going at an angle, but that doesn't really matter. I'm getting off track here. But it also gives the refraction to anti-proton weapons that aren't Baul, which is not a problem for us. All of ours are Baul. And it can give you an extra ricochet. So each shot chains to an additional target. So it's very powerful for us. It means our shots will ricochet twice to different targets, and those ricochets will get 100% Cat 2 damage. So it's a very nice passive to have. And then I have the opening salvo console off the Titan. Gives it EPG and weapon specialization. Not the most relevant passives, but not bad. And then opening salvo, the big claim to fame for this one is that it can knock subsystems offline for 5 seconds, and that includes shields, and that can be really big for elite content. Knocking shields offline is a super powerful effect. Whole image refractors, this is like the tanking console, or one of the big ones. You can get this off the exchange. It comes from a lockbox, but not from a ship, so you don't have to get a ship to get it. You can just get it from a console pack or whatever, and it gets 20% Cat 1 all damage, which is very nice. Incoming heals exceeding max hull get temporary hit points. Super great passives for a tank. You never ever want to use the clicky though, so make sure your clicky is not on your hotbars. You don't even want to click it by accident because it will stealth you, which is exact opposite of what you want to do as a tank. Tholian web spinner array, this thing is insanely good, and pretty much you'll see it all over the place. Every kind of build, most people are using it. It's just so strong. The passives don't benefit us too much other than the control expertise. And then against held foes, gain 50% Cat 2 damage. It does a lot of damage on its own. It's always very high up on the parser. It's a strong damage dealer. It can hold targets. It's just a really powerful console. It's an event reward, so if you didn't get the event, you may have to wait to get it from Mud's Market or something like that. This is probably the most expendable console I have here. Other popular consoles I could put here, maybe the Genesis Seed. Time will tell, maybe the new console from the Saturn would be good in this spot. But I have high energy communications network, and this is off of the new Tier 6 carriers, Tier 6 carrier bundle with the Aspero and all those kinds of ships. And it gives aux power, hull capacity, but then the clicky, for 20 seconds, allies get accuracy, defense, shield resistance, and then the real reason I'm putting it on here, the selling point, is that foes within 4 kilometers get minus 30 all damage resistance rating, so it does debuff enemies, which is part of what we're going for here. This is, I've labeled this as a support tank. It's not a pure tank. It's also not a pure support ship. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the two. I'm tanking, but I'm also trying to provide some support capacity as well. Crowd control in the form of gravity well effects and debuffing enemy resistances are the two big things that a support ship can provide, as well as giving haste for energy weapons and concentrate firepower for torpedoes. And tanks, obviously the big thing with a tank is reducing outgoing enemy damage and taking threats so that other people don't have to run as much survival on their ship. So that's going to help with both of those things because it's going to increase the survivability of our allies and debuff our enemies. The Graviton Displacer, this is gravity well on a stick, and so it's going to help us get more gravity well effects in a short period of time. Super useful console. DPRM, don't have to say much about this. You get 100% or 100 bonus damage resistance rating, 40% bonus damage, and 500% hull regeneration when you use the clicky. The more often we can get this up, the better. All those things are useful for us. I have one colony console because I am an engineer, so I'm going to struggle more with damage than I am with healing. If I were a tactical, maybe I might have 2 instead of 1 or something like that. Also, this ship doesn't have a large amount of tactical console seating. It gives us that Cat 1 damage, but instead of giving us crit chance or severity like a locator or a exploiter, we get a chance on firing modes to, well, specifically on for energy weapon firing modes, so we only have fire at will for this, to give us some healing and some shield regeneration. So every time we click fire at will, we're going to get some additional healing, or a chance at some additional healing. And then I have 2 locators on here just for the crit chance and the Cat 1 damage. It's still important to do damage because even if you have a lot of threat increasing stuff on your ship, you still need to be able to do some proportional damage to the DPS in order to maintain that threat. And then for the pets, I decided to go with the ones that come with the ship, upgraded to Epic, of course. The Aceton Beam will help debuff outgoing enemy damage, so that's nice right there. For the skill tree, I didn't have threat control, so I had to redo this, and I did it a bit hastily. This is probably not optimal, so don't copy this. But the big thing for a tank is you have to make sure you have threat control, because it's going to give you 100% additional threat generation while in threatening stance, and you really want to make sure you have that, among other things, but that's a really critical one. For traits, I've got Adaptive Offense for damage, Boimler for cooldown reduction, Fleet Coordinator for damage, Fragment of AI Tech gives us control expertise for our gravity well as some Cat 1 energy damage, and with Synthetic Good Fortune on the build, we're going to get up to 30%, no problem. Our control expertise is going to max out during a run. We have Inspirational Leader, which just gives us lots of useful skills across the board. Healing, restoration, hull capacity, damage, all kinds of stuff, crit chance. Intelligent Agent Attaché cools down our captain abilities, which is very useful. We have menacing. This is the only tank-specific trait I have slotted. It's giving us double threatening stance chance to gain stacks and double threatening stance max stacks gained per second. If you look at threatening stance, which is something everyone has available to them, you get plus 300% threat generation, super critical for tanking. 40% chance when damaged, increase maximum hold by 5% for 60 seconds, max 2 stacks per second, 10 stacks maximum. And then of course this ship also has attract fire, which gives not similar but other kinds of benefits as well. Then we have beam training, because we're using beams, Terran targeting system for damage, and unconventional systems to help cool down our consoles. And you can see that we have 6 console clickies we're actually using. Whole image refractors would be number 7, but like I said, you never ever want to click on that. I have emergency weapon cycle for damage. I have redirecting arrays to increase the uptime of our fire at will. History, remember, this is a big tanking starship trait. It gives you damage, hull regeneration, maximum hull, and extra threat. So that's very useful. Then we have improved gravity well, which is going to help lower the minimum cooldown for our gravity well, and put a damage resistance debuff on the target of our gravity well, which will just help things go a lot smoother. And since we only have gravity well 1 on this ship, all the help we can get for gravity well is welcome. Unified engineering. This is the trait that comes with the ship, and it's very, very good. Whenever we use Oxtasive, which we have on the build, or a command ability, we are giving ourselves and teammates hull capacity, cooldown reduction, flight turn rate, flight speed, and hull regeneration. It's a very strong trait. Very good for support builds and tanks alike. And then synthetic good fortune. This was nerfed. Nerfed is maybe not the right word. It was balanced to what it probably should have been from the beginning. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I've been complaining about this because it was persisting through map move and also even after you were taking it off of your ship, and it was just too powerful. Now it no longer persists through map transfer, so you have to build up the stacks on the map you're in, but still it's a decent trait. It gives a lot of control expertise, which we want, and it gives crit chance, and if you have pilot seating, it's going to be even better for you. It's not the best trait in the world. There are better traits. Traits that people might use are things like superior area denial is a very popular one for tanks, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret about superior area denial. You ready? I don't have it. It comes off of a lockbox ship, it's expensive, and I just haven't gone out of my way to get it. And that happens sometimes. So maybe synthetic good fortune won't be worth it anymore now that it's been changed, but I'm leaving it on here for the time being. And then for our reputation traits, I actually need to change this one. It looks like it didn't save the change, unfortunately. That happens sometimes. It does not save the changes. Radiant detonation matrix. Go. Alright, so we've got crit chance, crit severity, more crit chance from Tyler's duality, energy refrequencer, which is a great source of healing, and then radiant detonation matrix. Directed energy weapons have a chance to deal additional radiation damage and remove buffs in a small area around the target. 2.5% chance, do some radiation damage and remove buffs. So I got some advice to try that, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And I may as well go ahead and save our build. Let's go ahead and look at the bridge officer stations. I no longer need torpedo spread 1, so I could change that out for something else. And I guess we could put chemosite-laced weapons on there, because I was using the Entwined Tactical Matrices version of the build until very recently, until I decided to go ahead and redo this video. And there are sirens in the background because, of course, there are. So let's go ahead and get that saved. And we have chemosite-laced weapons. We have attack batter Delta 1. And we have some duty officers that are going to play into that later. We've got focused assault, which is a nice, I guess you could call it a debuff. You put it on a target. It's a bit like concentrate firepower where you put it on the target, but it's a buff to your allies. So for the next 20 seconds, allies attacking the target get Cat 2 damage and accuracy. And so it's a pretty nice ability for support. And I just didn't have anything too much better to put there. I guess I could have put fire at will too. We got fire at will, which obviously we're using to hit our targets with. And then for control abilities and for science, we have gravity well, scramble sensors, jam targeting sensors, and tractor beam. Those are all control abilities, so those are going to help cool down our clicky consoles, and gravity well is a super important ability for doing support. And then photonic officer, which is probably unnecessary given all the control, the cooldown reduction we have, but unfortunately there isn't really a fifth other good science control ability to put in there, and since neither of these are specialization seating, I opted to just go ahead and this just to make sure that we definitely have as much cooldown reduction as we could need. Then for our Commander Engineering Command seat, we have the big daddy of tanking abilities, Suppression Barrage 3. It's going to enhance our weapons so that enemies do 50% less outgoing damage. It also slows them down and reduces their accuracy. It's a massive outgoing damage debuff to enemies, which is going to help with team survival, even if those enemies aren't attacking us. We got Concentrate Firepower 3. I don't have any torpedoes on the build, but this is going to help other people who do have torpedoes. So if someone else is doing a torpedo build, I can mark enemies with Concentrate Firepower 3 to give them extra damage. We have Aux to Civ, which is going to trigger Unified Engineering, and we have Emergency Power to Engines, which can be used to reset the cooldown on our evasive maneuvers. Okay, that was a lot, and that's the build, and we're going to go ahead and go over the duty officers real quick. So go to roster, active space. I have a sixth slot I should be filling here, but I've got 28 of 47. That's expensive Borg Doff. 15% chance when using a science ability to improve team-wide maximum hull by 10%. When using command abilities, 30% chance to improve exotic damage. Emergency Con hologram is going to give us that cooldown on our evasive maneuvers for speed. I have two Dak Ukan duty officers. These stack and increases threat generation of attack pattern delta by 100%, so they'll be 200%. And then we've got an 8 of 47, and this is a tactical 5% chance to activate attack pattern delta 1, and command 10% chance to activate attack pattern delta 1. So using tactical and command can help give us attack pattern delta. Why am I pointing this out? One of the things you can do if you have these duty officers is you can go back to your build and you can replace your attack pattern delta with attack pattern beta. And then you can have beta and delta because the duty officer will trigger extra deltas for you. But I just went ahead and put delta in here for now. And that is the build. I'm not really going to be able to go out and show it to you, but I do have a parse we can look at. So let's look at that in just a second. Okay, and we're here looking at a parse. I had originally intended this build to be more of a pug tank, so that I was the only person in the group potentially who was doing any kind of tanking or support, but I got invited to a high-end supported run, or at least a supported run anyway, and I was able to tank for them, and it went pretty well. So Gemini here did 1.3 million DPS. It was unfortunately not a personal best for this person, but the run still went pretty well overall. You can see I was second in damage, which doesn't really mean anything because all three of the other players in the group were in some kind of supporting capacity. I happened to be the tank in the group. The other two players were providing support in different ways. And we took in a massive 72.24% of the incoming damage. So I would say that we did our job pretty well overall. I was able to hit all of the key gravity well and graviton placements to help group up targets. So overall it was a pretty successful run, given that it was my first time doing a build like this and doing my first time doing a tank setup like this. So it was a lot of fun. It certainly works very well. Obviously I had a lot of expensive stuff on this build. I had Borg duty officers, Lobby gear, and all that. So it is more of a high-end build that has a lot of expensive stuff on it. But there are certainly opportunities for you to pare back and use less expensive stuff. But that is my build for the Buran. So if you watched the review and you were wondering, how do you set this ship up for tanking? Well, now you have some idea of what an elite tank, when I say elite, I mean elite difficulty, what an elite tank build for the Buran might look like. And you can see that in a run where people are doing over 1 million DPS, it was still able to hold up under the pressure. So thank you guys very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.